Happy Friday to all of the legends and real ones coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Could the Eagles trade for Saints wide receiver Chris Olave? His name being mentioned as a potential trade target across the entire National Football League. Also coming up here on the show, Howie Roseman and the Eagles losing two key members of the organization and the front office. It's all coming your way right now on Philadelphia Eagles Now, so let's get it. We know that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith form one of the top wide receiver duos in the National Football League, but wide receiver 3 on this Eagles roster has been a big question mark ever since Nick Sirianni came to the Eagles in 2021, and so could Chris Olave be that Eagles target to fulfill that role? Why it could happen. The Eagles are still not content, potentially, with that wide receiver 3 spot. Chris Olave would be a prototypical slot receiver for this Eagles offense. He's a little bit smaller, but he's slippery, good footwork, really elusive in the open field. He's also a very explosive player coming out of that inside role. Last year when the Eagles played the New Orleans Saints early in the year, he put a really good route on C.J. Gardner-Johnson toward the back corner and scored a touchdown from Derek Carr. Brandon Graham, who obviously retired this offseason after becoming one of the most legendary players to ever suit up in an Eagles uniform and won 2 Super Bowl championships with Philadelphia, said something very interesting, that he thinks going into 2025, this Eagles offense could be a little bit more balanced. Last year, they were a run-heavy offense, headlined by Saquon Barkley, putting together the magical season that he had, which resulted in him winning NFL Offensive Player of the Year. But with how Jalen Hurts played in the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl, with all the financial capital tied up to him, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and with Kevin Patullo now being inserted as offensive coordinator to take over for Kellen Moore, could the Eagles become a more balanced offense? Obviously, BG is tied in with this organization. And then this Saints team. Not only do they have one of the worst rest disadvantages in the NFL, no primetime games, pretty difficult schedule, I don't think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the National Football League as Kellen Moore tries to rebuild that team. And so the Saints could be entering rebuild and retool mode. Chris Olave could also want a fresh start. Things haven't worked out great for him since being drafted by New Orleans in the first round a couple of years ago in 2022. He's had to deal with some concussion issues, and playing for the Saints, it is not the experience of playing with the Philadelphia Eagles from top to bottom. And a lot of these NFL rumors have been buzzing online, linking the Eagles to a Chris Olave trade. The number one team that is said to be interested in Olave is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They, of course, traded away George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys. They traded for DK Metcalf a little bit earlier this year. That organization is said to be high on Roman Wilson, the former Michigan player, going into year 2 after he kind of had an injury-riddled debut season in the National Football League. But Chris Olave would be a player who makes sense for Pittsburgh across the state of Pennsylvania. It would not be the first time that the Eagles have been involved in a trade with Chris Olave's name involved. We turn it back to that 2022 draft night, and Howie Roseman made a couple of trades, right? He traded for A.J. Brown in that trade with the Tennessee Titans. And on top of that, the Eagles made a trade with the New Orleans Saints, and they moved up to take Jordan Davis. So this is a lot for the eye, but let me just kind of break it down here. The Eagles traded for A.J. Brown. They got the 18th pick from the Tennessee Titans. They then used that 18th pick to move up with the Baltimore Ravens to take Jordan Davis. They passed up on Kyle Hamilton. And we'll see if that trade ends up being a failure for Howie Roseman or a miss. But Jordan Davis has been solid. Eagles exercise his 5th-year option. And obviously Kyle Hamilton is one of the top safeties in the National Football League. But the Eagles have made multiple trades with the Saints over the years, and it did include that trade on draft night. And as part of that trade, The Eagles ended up being able to take Nakobe Dean. They also got a 2023 first-round pick, which they used to move up to take Jalen Carter, and they got a 2024 second-round pick. The Saints had received from Philadelphia 16 and 19, and they took Chris Olave, who's ended up being a good player, Trevor Penning, who's been awful, and then they took Jordan Jackson with the 194th pick. Going back to that Eagles and Saints history, these two organizations have been intertwined. This is Mickey Loomis, the Saints general manager. He doesn't like Howie Roseman because Howie Roseman has fleeced him on numerous occasions. The Eagles signed Malcolm Jenkins away from New Orleans. Malcolm Jenkins ended up being a key cog of that Eagles organization. Leadership on and off the field, a pillar in the community, a pillar in the locker room, and a fantastic player who helped the Eagles win Super Bowl 52 in taking down Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. The Eagles also traded for Darren Sproles, kind of fleeced New Orleans with that move. Sproles ended up being a great player for Philadelphia for a few years. There was that C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade right before the start of the 2022 season. That move was pivotal for the Eagles defense that year. And then, of course, the draft night trade that we just talked about. As for Chris Olave's production, really, really good player. And since coming out of Ohio State, he's been highly productive. Unfortunately for him, in 2024, he only played 8 games. He suffered a concussion, then he took a big hit, and he dealt with another concussion, and it cut his season short. And it was really unfortunate because his first 2 years in the NFL, 15 games played as a rookie in 2022, 72 grabs over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then in year 2, he bested that season in 16 games with 87 grabs, 1,100 yards, and 5 touchdowns. We're talking about one of the top young receivers in the NFL. Of course, when you involve concussions in the discussion, that is a little bit of a concern. And Olave has dealt with bad concussion issues. Both of those concussions happening last year, and it ended up being just a crushing season for New Orleans. There were injuries left and right after they began the year with 2 really impressive wins against Carolina, against Dallas when they dropped more than 40 points in each of those ball games. Then they suffered that loss against the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 3, and after that, they couldn't escape the injury bug. This Eagles wide receiver depth chart, it's of course an interesting one, and sometimes you don't have to worry about the wide receiver 3 production when you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but it would be nice to have a more consistent option there. Now, why hasn't Jahan Dotson been able to perform with the Eagles in his lone 2024 season? A lot of it is due to Saquon Barkley getting a lot of carries, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith getting a lot of targets, and Dallas Goedert is pretty much the third receiver option. Now, is Dotson, who was drafted in the first round as well in 2022, going to live up to the first round billing? Probably not. He's probably best suited to be a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. But we have seen that wide receiver 3s have struggled to produce under Nick Sirianni because the Eagles have been very talented at that wide receiver position. And so I think Dotson has talent. He is not on par with Chris Olave. There is no way that in a full season, Olave would have as little production as Dotson had last year, 19 catches, 216 yards. You would upgrade with Olave over Dotson. But I don't think that Dotson is a terrible player like he's been made out to be by some people. Wide receiver is also one of those positions you can just never have enough good players. And let's just say A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, they were to get hurt. How do you feel about that wide receiver room? Jahan Dotson, Anaya Smith, Johnny Wilson? That isn't a great wide receiver room there. And that's where bulking up the depth at that wide receiver spot could make a lot of sense for the Eagles. Howie Roseman, as we know, always aggressive. And he's made a lot of summer moves. We know that he's made trades in season. We know that he's been aggressive in free agency. We know that he's famous for making so many draft trades. But as he examines the roster a little bit, he also has made a lot of moves prior to the season in order to improve his football club. But I don't think that Howie makes a move to this caliber, especially factoring that Olave is probably going to want to get paid at some point soon. And I don't think the Saints would want to trade Olave to Philadelphia. A lot of you know Trizzy Trace. He is the host of our Saints channel, Saints Now, and longtime producer of Eagles Now. He did a lot in helping to grow this channel. He's a diehard Saints fan. He would be an absolute shambles if the Saints traded Chris Olave to the Eagles. Chip brought that up. I couldn't agree more. Before we continue to push forward on today's show, coming up tomorrow on Saturday, it might be the weekend, but the coverage never ends right here on the program. Be on the lookout because I put together a video of my 5 Philadelphia Eagles breakout candidates for 2025. You don't want to miss that video. So hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications by hitting that bell icon. Therefore, anytime we push out a show, anytime we go live, you'll be notified so that you can stay in the know. Before we get to the back half of the show, if you want an Eagles jersey prior to the beginning of the 2025 season, get yours today. It's very simple. All you have to do is plug in that link down below, chatsports.com/Eagles jersey. You can do that on your desktop. You can do that on your mobile device. It'll take you to Fanatics, and you have a plethora of options to choose from. Chip has been filtering through all of these different Eagles jerseys. You can get those and more, current players, former players. But if you also want a shirt, a polo, a hoodie, a hat, Fanatics has everything that you need to load up your closet with some great Philadelphia Eagles merchandise. It's chatsports.com/Eagles jersey. We always appreciate Fanatics for partnering up with us here on Philadelphia Eagles. Now, to some news that impacts the Eagles scouting department and the front office. When you are a good team and you have as much success as the Eagles have had, both with the coaching staff, on the roster with players getting bags in free agency, when you've had as much success as Howie Roseman has had, when you're as respected as him, people are going to try to poach your front office executives and your scouts as well to try to enhance their front office units. That has happened twice recently for Philadelphia, and 2 members of this front office have both gone to the Las Vegas Raiders under new general manager John Spytek, who teamed up with Tom Brady, a partial owner of the Raiders, to hire longtime coach Pete Carroll this offseason. The first move is Brandon Hunt going to the Raiders. This news was made official yesterday. Brandon Hunt has joined the Raiders as the new vice president of player personnel. The Raiders announcing that news on Thursday. Hunt goes to Las Vegas from the Eagles, of course, where he was a part of the Super Bowl 59 championship team. If a lot of you saw that War Room video, which gave us a behind-the-scenes look of the Eagles draft, you saw Brandon Hunt in that video with Howie Roseman on day 3. He had voiced his support for the Eagles taking Kyle McCord, a player who I really like. Hunt served as the senior director of scouting in 2024 after 2 seasons as the director of scouting in 2022 2023. Why have the Eagles had one of the most talented and deepest rosters in the NFL in recent memory over the last few years? Yes, Howie Roseman has been running the show. Yes, Howie Roseman is the best general manager in the game. But they've also drafted very well. And Brandon Hunt has played a large role in that. And so he is going to be missed by Philadelphia. Prior to his arrival with the Eagles, he spent 12 years, 2010 to 2021, as the pro scouting coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. In that role, he was responsible for scouting opponents and evaluating pro players. From 2007 to 2009, he served as a pro scout with the Houston Texans after working as an intern in the Steelers scouting department from 2005 to 2006, where he was a part of the staff for that Pittsburgh Steelers Super Bowl championship team. The Steelers are another team. They have done a really good job of drafting and developing in-house players. They don't spend a ton of money in free agency. Like Philadelphia, they have drafted very well. Brandon Hunt was a part of that. Obviously, this is the next step in his career arc in trying to become a general manager for an NFL team. And then, what was this, last week or the week before, Anthony Patch also left the Eagles for the Las Vegas Raiders. He was with the Eagles for 23 years. He is taking the job of senior personnel executive with Las Vegas. He was part of both Super Bowl championship teams for the Eagles, most recently served as the team's senior director of college scouting since 2016. Previously held titles with the director of college scouting 2012 to 2015, assistant director of college scouting 2010-2011, and the West Coast area scout from 03 to 09, and college scouting coordinator in 2002. So he was with the Eagles for a long while. This is nothing new to Howie Roseman and this Eagles front office. In 2019, Vice President of Player Personnel Joe Douglas left to become the Jets general manager. The Browns hired VP of Operations Andrew Berry as their general manager. In 2022, Vice President of Football Operations Catherine Raishi left to join Berry with the Browns. Co-director of Player Personnel Brandon Brown took an assistant GM job with the Giants. Director of Co-Player Personnel and Ian Cunningham left to join the Bears. And Vice President of Player Personnel Andy Weidel left to become the Steelers' assistant GM. VP of Football Administration Jake Rosenberg left last March to work with the University of Oklahoma on NIL matters. And now Patch and Hunt both leave to join the Raiders. Again, when you're one of the most respected, one of the most successful organizations in the game, this is what happens. It's all about adapting and evolving, and the Eagles have done a really good job of that, and it's all about replacing that exiting talent as well. If you want to give me a follow on X and Instagram, hit me up at Chase_Senior. Large followings on both platforms. We reach a few million people here a month on YouTube. I'm reaching a few million people a month on my social media pages, and I'm always talking Eagles.